Excellent. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the PGPMAX Industry Dialogue. In the fifth edition of the PGPMAX Industry Dialogue, we discuss the entrepreneurial pursuit in an attempt to decode the entrepreneurial journey through experiences of our alumni. We have an amazing panel of PGPMAX alumni from various stages of their entrepreneurial journey today with us to drive this discussion forward. The dialogue will last for 60 minutes and we will then open up for Q&A. Please use the Q&A box which is available towards the bottom of your screen to share in your questions as and when you have it. And we'll be happy to share it with our panelists after the first discussions are over. The Q&A today will be limited to the topic, so please do restrict it to the topic in question. If you do have any program or admission related query, I'll be happy to take it offline. I'll be sharing a link in the chat box in some time to book a one-to-one conversation with our admission office for this. Now, introducing the panel to you, in our panel today, we have with us Naveen Potagunda. Naveen is an alumnus of class of 14 and is the founder and CEO of Devami Design Labs. Naveen took his entrepreneurial pursuit after a long career in technology in the US and has been successful running Devami for nearly a decade now. Welcome, Naveen. We also have with us, excellent. We also have with us Ritu Kaul. Ritu is an alumna of class of 17 and is a chief marketing officer of Callan's IT services in the US. Ritu has successfully started 2 ventures and ran Coffee Brain marketing for over a decade before her successful exit and transition back to the corporate. Welcome, Ritu.
Thank you, Thomas.
We also have with us Raghuram Vimugandi. Raghu is an alumnus of class of 20 and is a co-founder and chief product officer at Aspecto Technologies. Raghu is a veteran and was a lieutenant colonel with the Indian Army before joining the PGPMAX as a program. During his course, he co-founded Aspecto Technologies with one of his batchmates and took the entrepreneurial pursuit from them. Welcome, Raghu.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Glad to be here.
Excellent. And our moderator for today is Anuj Bhatia. Anuj is part of our current cohort, class of 23, and is the founder of E-Trade Marketing. Anuj took the entrepreneurial pursuit early in his career and has been running E-Trade Marketing for over a decade now. E-Trade today generates revenues worth more than $300 million with interest across e-commerce and B2B retail. And it's one of the largest seller-side partners for Amazon in the country. Welcome, Anuj, and thank you for agreeing to be our host today.
Yeah.
Let me hand over. Excellent. Let me hand over the event to you now to steer the dialogue forward. I would also request you to talk a little about your entrepreneurial journey before we get started to set the context and then take the dialogue forward. Over to you now.
Yeah, sure, Thomas. Thank you so much for this opportunity and thank you, everyone. So I started my entrepreneurial journey a little early and, that was a very young age, even I would say I was just 23. And the risk-taking ability was, to the highest level at that point in time. So, and this journey has gone quite exciting. I have seen every high and lows, going into, sometime into travel, sometime into a very exciting kind of a mode. And then, as everyone says, there is no problem in growing, but there is sometimes a problem in overgrowing. So have seen all those phases and, have seen how the funding works, how you have to be very much sure about your working capital, how you have to handle a lot of plethora on your table. At the same point in time, you have to be ready for a different kind of roles. So what happened in industry? So what I did a job for, not for much, but for a year. So I've seen that difference, right? You're there, you have one particular responsibility in your hand. And then once you move into entrepreneurial journey, you have a lot to do, right? So it's not about HR, it's not about finance, it's a plethora of things then you have to handle and you have to manage and you have to, every day live with it. So my entrepreneurial journey begins at 2005. I started this. Earlier we went to offline distribution, then we shifted our gears, we came into e-commerce. We found it very exciting, rising ahead of the time. And then the one beautiful thing, I've seen over my career, over this journey is entrepreneurs are always have to be open to risk, right? So the resilience has to be continued. So you cannot say one day, okay, I cannot do, or I can go back to the job. So one thing that I very much believe in, once you're into entrepreneurial pursuit, you cannot say I can go to a job, or there is no switch in between actually. So what a lot of people have seen does. So or otherwise you should take some successful exits. So you have made a venture, okay, and then that's, you have taken it to a height, or you don't want to continue it further. That's a different case altogether. But this is how this entrepreneurial pursuit goes on. So I will open few questions to you all. How can one take an idea forward? What you believe? So I would request first to Raghu, right? You are going through an entrepreneurial pursuit. So over to you. First, a brief introduction and then.
Okay, Sujit and I, we co-founded Aspecto a little more than 2 years ago, and both of us were, classmates from class of 20. And it all just started with a very simple discussion that we were having about the quality of education that we have in India, and how, knowledge gaps in students result in poor grades, even though they are capable of achieving much higher grades. Why some students fail to do so? Because of certain knowledge gaps. So that was a very simple, discussion that we were having, and which led to us ideating about how we can use technology to solve this problem. So problem seems simple, but the technology involved in actually solving this is quite complex. But that's what we were able to do over a little more than a year, about 18 months or so. And once we got the algorithms right, we had our patents in hand. We validated it with our the initial lot of customers that we had. That's when we started in the growth phase, and that's how my company, my startup Aspecto, came into being. And we also realized with the core technology that we have developed, we have use cases in other verticals as well, like security, or in retail space, warehouse management. So that's where we are headed now. So in short, that's a brief intro about my startup. And yeah.
So how you define the early growth? How you were handling that early growth? What are the identifiers, or what are the pitfalls one should avoid?
See, firstly, we once we had the idea, once we knew that this is a viable problem that needs to be solved, because every problem need not be solved. Only if it's economically viable, then you actually think about investing money and trying to develop a solution for it. So once we were convinced that this is a feasible business idea, we set about developing our prototypes, or MVP as you call it, and then we tested it in our focus group and the initial lot of potential users. And so that's how we actually understood that the problem is slightly more complex. We were trying to solve just one part of the problem, but there are other stakeholders in the system, and there are the problem statement for all the other stakeholders is different. So that's how it actually helped us in developing the product features more focused towards the customer's point of view. So till then we were just thinking of the problem that we wanted to solve. But once we developed the MVP, we ideated with the schools that we were associated with. We understood what the product features need to be, and that's how we started building the final versions of the product. And to validate the product, I feel there's two or three things that that are involved. Firstly, the potential customer, does he see value in the problem, the solution that you are providing, and is their problem actually getting solved? That is point number one. Second thing is, are the customers willing to pay some amount of money in the context of the value that is being provided to him? And finally, is the product working in the way it is intended to work? So once we are able to validate all these three things, then you can actually freeze the initial versions and then probably build on it. And as far as pitfalls you mentioned about, what the pitfalls are concerned, in my opinion, I think getting fixated on the idea, I think is a big pitfall at this stage. Rather, I think you should focus on the problem that needs to be solved. So what I mean by that is, unless you are focused on the problem, you might tend to get biased and try to, not realize that, if it's not working out, if it's not viable, you may not, step back at the right time. So I think at the growth stage, your vision has to be fixed towards solving the problem rather than, just, the idea of it.
So you narrated very beautifully. One thing is, are your customers ready to pay? So in today's world, right, we see every day that a lot of startups have to pivot again and again because the customers are not ready to pay for a particular solution. So that is one thing very important you highlighted. Another thing is what help one can seek to validate the idea and to take that leap. How they can take the help of their cohorts, how they can take the help of their mentors, and then
Right. So one thing is definitely what you mentioned, right? Is you need to be observant of the market conditions and have a plan B in place so that you are able to pivot in time. And so, for example, in my case, when we actually developed our MVP for the classrooms, so pandemic happened, and then we had to actually pivot, and we were able to pivot in time and develop an online product which would integrate well with Zoom or Microsoft Meet and WebEx. So being flexible helped us to pivot at the right time. We were able to be in touch with the stakeholders very frequently, and we were able to get the pulse of what the market requires. Second thing is, of course, networking. And by networking, I mean, the right people. For example, in the startup community, meeting the other founders, or even meeting the folks at the incubation centers or the innovation centers. This helps in, not only understanding the competition, it also helps you get ideas on how viable your business model is, and you also get good ideas on how to price your products. And another important thing is to establish relationships at this stage with people who are actually willing to help you in testing and validating this idea. And for me, using my network, we are able to find a good school in time, which could offer us around 1,500 students. This actually helped us great deal to validate all our algorithms in time. So had it not been the case, it would have been a real challenge for us to, firstly validate our algorithms, whether they are accurate or not. And lastly, I think we need to find a partner to collectively, move the idea, who's equally passionate about the idea. And of course, they need to have complementary skill sets.
absolutely bang on, Raghuram. Thank you so much. So and to Naveen, so you are in a mature stage of growth, right? Active in business expansion. So whatever I've come to know, you are expanding your business very fast. Divami has been running from 2014, and you had overcome many of the challenges to be when you are. So what is those things you have kept an eye on, and which has ensured your growth till now?
Yeah. Just a minor correction, Anuj. Actually, we've been in business for 14 years. So we've been running from 2008, actually. I think the 14 number is the number of years we've been in business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think most startups go through this phase, right? There is, we all make mistakes. We've had our share of mistakes. So we went through, good times and bad. Generally, when you have a, startup in the beginning, sometimes it is easy to get early stage of growth. It's the later scaling part that sometimes, not sometimes, in fact, a lot of startups falter there. right? And sometimes it's called the death valley because you're suddenly falling off the cliff, and then it's very tough to get back up. We had our version of that a while ago, but we had it behind us, and it's typically we can always, with hindsight, we can always look back and say, oh, those are the mistakes that we did. So we had our share of mistakes. We didn't invest enough in the sales and marketing engines, and we tried to grow without aligning the business growth with the company size growth. So several mistakes, and then we had our downside. We've learned our lessons. Hopefully we won't repeat them. But there'll be newer challenges while we're growing. So as we're growing, these days, for example, it is growing the talent side is a challenge. Of course, sales and marketing is never easy. Getting the mix right is always a challenge. Finding the right customer is obviously a challenge. So some of the things that you have to keep your eye on is, firstly, you have to really understand who your target customer is, like ideal customer, right? We call them ICPs, ideal customer profile. Who your ideal customer profile is, what is your offering to them, right? What problem are you solving for them, and how are you solving it, and what are you offering them? If you're very focused on that, and if you're able to really articulate very well what those are, and make sure that your entire team is understanding the same thing. So a lot of times I see that that vision of who you're talking to and all of that is only at the leadership level, but it's very important for that knowledge to trickle down in the organization, so everybody is kind of seeing the same thing, right? It is not an exaggeration to say that, hey, even the fresher who joins, they should at least understand who your ideal customer is. What is your value to your customer, right? What are you really solving, and what are you providing them? It's so much more important in services, but I wouldn't say that is not important in product. It's equally, and equally important in product also, that everybody understand what is the value that they're trying to deliver. That's when you hear something different from the customer, then somebody can flag, hey, we are thinking this, but the customer is saying this. Where is the disconnect? And if you hear more and more of it, then you know that there is a shift in the market. There's a trend that is changing in your customer's mind, and then you need to adapt to that. If you're not doing this, that's when you're in trouble as well. And I hope it's a long explanation to what you asked, but I hope I covered what you're asking.
No, definitely, Naveen, absolutely. So the points you highlighted are very valid, actually. So one is the scale, which the entrepreneur always has to look about. Another is how to avoid the death valley situation. So, and we have seen in recent past, right, wherein, a lot of startups have gone into death valley, and, it is almost impossible to come out of it. And that's why it's called as death valley. And another point you raised very valid is the market segmentation. You should know who is your customer, how you can make the product viable to the customer. So these are the very valid points, I would say. So to Ritu, you ran your venture for a decade and have a very successful exit. You also transitioned into another role building on your startup success. So what takeaways you took from your last venture, how it was, and how should someone consider the startup journey?
Yeah. Thanks, Anuj. Anuj, before I sort of go into what lessons I learned and how I exited, I think it's important to share my journey.
Yeah, sure.
It's been very nice to hear Naveen and Raghu, but I've been an accidental entrepreneur, as I tell everybody. It was not something that I planned for. It was not something that, sort of I designed. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who have this desire to actually be an entrepreneur, or they have this great idea that they want to launch. In my case, it was a health issue that kind of pushed me in this direction, and I'm glad that it did. In around 2010, I was working at a leading FMCG in India, and I had to quit because I had an episode where I got partially paralyzed. And from that severe situation, I was kind of trying to make sense of what to do next. And, being a person who wanted to be sort of still engaged with work, I took a consulting assignment with one of the companies. I hadn't been a consultant ever. I didn't know how I would do in that journey. But, it has been my most fulfilling stint till date. And that's how the idea of Coffee Brain Marketing Consulting started. I realized that there is a need in the market to look at small and medium enterprises where, which require building marketing capability, marketing strategy. And, we were able to identify the market niche we would operate in. What is the value that, sort of our typical customer is seeking, and how sort of we are giving that value to the customer. So that was really the starting of Coffee Brain Marketing Consulting. But I must also say, as the founder of Coffee Brain Marketing Consulting, I think the idea started with also, while I have been an accidental entrepreneur, but it also started with a passion that I have passion for marketing. And I was able to see that, we were able to create value for companies. And that's what, sort of kept us going. So I would say that, it's important to understand, what really the idea is and who that idea is serving, who's your ideal customer, what's the addressable market. And, there's also experimentation in the beginning. You really understand that you start with A, but you will need to pivot. You will need to sort of remodel. In our case, in the beginning, my first project was actually a positioning assignment for a leading food brand in India. The next few assignments again came to do with some sort of a marketing challenge. But, as we moved along, we realized that there is great value in actually offering a longer term consulting to a company which probably doesn't, is not as big that they can hire a CMO. So most of the companies we worked with were sort of interested in, understanding getting their marketing strategy on the table. They were then interested in implementing it. They were also interested in building the marketing capability, where we trained their teams. We hired agencies for them. When we were in the execution leg, we sort of trained those teams. So we pivoted multiple times over, and that is where this I call it a marketing consulting firm, that it was different from the agencies that were operating in the market. There were digital agencies, there were advertising agencies, there were content writing agencies. But at that time, for this particular segment, there was no single agency which was saying that, we provide sort of marketing strategy services. One of the products that we launched in the market was at that time the CMO services. I remember the fractional CMO. It was a fairly new idea in the Indian market. But that was the idea which kind of started differentiating. We started differentiating ourselves from the rest of the agencies in the market. So those are a few of the things that one has to look at. If you don't occupy a niche and you're competing where there is everybody else, it kind of gets very tough to establish yourself.
Absolutely right. So, and one thing you perfectly said, that one should have a passion, right? So once you have a passion for the product or for a service, it makes your entrepreneurial journey a lot easier. And then you get to understand what are the customer needs and where you have to steer the business. So,
right.
Yeah, you were saying something.
No, sorry. I said, yes, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. So what lessons you can share with your experience, or how you can talk about some, maturity, or how you exited from this business?
Yeah, first of all, I think first of the lessons, actually, the first thing that you realize after you work with the corporate is that, you start dealing with having not that infrastructure and support system. So your network actually becomes that infrastructure and support system. So, as an entrepreneur, I realized that, a crazy amount of networking is very, very essential. Actually reaching out to other entrepreneurs who've had the journey, and kind of learning from their experience, learning from their mistakes is something that is extremely important. You also, I think, have to have a lot of resilience, I would say, because you hear more no's than yeses. And it takes a lot to open that one door of opportunity. So, those are some of the things that you need to be ready for, that you need to be learning. And the other thing that I think is very important that I personally learned is the fact that you really have to be a good salesperson, whether it's pitching your idea to investors or pitching your idea with conviction to potential customers. you have to be very good at it. And the reason I say that is, I've had a fairly long corporate stint before I moved into this journey. And you start realizing the power of a corporate. You're kind of focused on your own function, but here you're a salesperson, you're the chief financial officer, you're the person who's kind of looking at how to pay the next set of salaries and stuff like that. So, those are some of the things that you kind of learn in this journey, and that transforms you for life. Regarding the exit, I think in my case, we merged into another marketing agency, which was launching in India. So that's how our exit happened. And I was with them for a year to kind of stabilize and, help with the merger before I moved to the US.
Great. So how this ISP program, PGPMAX program, has helped you scale this business? What are the key takeaway which you took from the program and really helped you in this journey?
Right. So I actually was looking at ISP program at that specific point because I had a change in my journey. And I realized the fact that I needed a more broader perspective of the business. I'd been in the marketing domain for a fairly long time. And while, there was domain expertise, I was looking at expertise or an understanding of other areas. And I think I found the program really beneficial because it kind of gave me a 360 degree into the business itself. So for example, one of the objectives that I went into the program was to sort of go deeper into the financial aspects of the business. And I realized ISP did not have one, but I think 3 or 4 modules in the program looking at different aspects of, finance. Finance, supply chain, corporate strategy was some things that I actually really enjoyed these, these courses, and I actually immensely benefited from them. I also benefited a lot because the batches are very, very diverse. And I think you learn so much about other industries. You learn so much about what are the challenges that other industries are facing and how are they really solving those problems. And I remember that, there is a lot of interaction in the batches itself. In fact, it's something that is designed in the program. So, there is a lot of inputs you get from your batchmates. There's a lot of inputs that you give. And I remember, one of our courses, I think we were put together in a group, and there was an idea that started in the group that was launched by somebody. Right. So that's how powerful these networks, these discussions, that environment is. So I feel that, it immensely benefited me at that stage. And, there are professors also who have domain expertise. And, I remember going to, and they're very open, if you have facing a business challenge and you want to discuss it with them, they do give you the time. And, some of them are actually consultants in the, apart from sort of being in academics, and they have valuable sort of lessons to share and advice to give. And that's actually very helpful too.
Right, absolutely. So Raghu, what's your take on this ISB PGPMAX program? What did you learn from this? What you took back to the system and the support system you found there?
Yeah, for me, I think it was one of the best decisions I took. And what Ritu mentioned, firstly, it gives you a lot of credibility outside. Okay. And second thing is you're able to have a structured framework while making any decisions. And every subject that you study during the 15-month program actually contributes to some part of, the way you think, the way you, make a business decision. So for example, even a subject like ethics and stakeholder management, it actually helped us to think from the customer's perspective. When you're developing an AI product, a lot of issues about ethics that could actually crop up, when you think from the perspective of the customers. So this program actually helped us to come up with a good thought process on how to address those concerns. Next is subjects like economics, finance, and all. They also help you make a viable business model, and also think from the perspective of the investors, potential investors, on what their requirements are and whether you are able to actually meet those requirements. Because unless you tell a good story, they won't be interested. So they're not interested in, how good your product is. They want to know the business side of it. How much money is it going to make, and in how much time. Now to create that story, it's the PGPMAX program. The content that we went through was immensely helpful. And of course, there were a few professors whom we actively approached for guidance. And one of our ex-deans also, he spent nearly 3 hours with me in trying to, ideate on the pros and cons of some of the features that we have developed. So it's like a lifelong relationship that you build with the institute.
Perfect. So Naveen, how you find this ISB PGPMAX program, and what were your key takeaways?
In my case, similar to Ritu, actually, I had a long corporate journey before, I got into entrepreneurial. I spent almost 15 years in the US. And then after moving back to India, and all my time in the US was spent at corporate as a product manager. And once I got back, maybe a year after that, I had started Divami. It is actually while running Divami that I felt I could benefit from the PGPMAX program, and I joined ISB. While we had already been in business about I think by 5-6 years by that time, and that's when I joined ISB. Actually, the way it happened is, I happened to attend a kind of like a weekend program that ISB and TIE offered together at the time. And I was simply, I was blown away by the quality of faculty that they were able to bring just for that weekend program. And when I looked at then, that's when I started looking into, hey, if just a weekend program could give me this kind of knowledge and information, then I could benefit a lot more from a more structured program, a longer term program. And so when I looked at PGPMAX, the thing that really caught my attention is the quality of the faculty that was coming in. And, the program was really bringing, the best of faculty from, the top universities everywhere. So that really, prompted me to go ahead and apply and get in and all of that. And it just, it has never disappointed. That definitely in that aspect, it has never disappointed. I think Ritu and Raghu both pointed out the different aspects. I completely agree with both of them. What Ritu said about, before ISB, I felt that I was a very unidimensional person. I really only knew technology products, how to build tech products and all of that. I simply had no idea about all the different, verticals and industries and, even different areas like operations and finance and things. Finance and accounting, I had some, kind of a fairly decent background because I was already running the company. But the program really opened my eyes to everything else, all the different industries, for example, supply chain and, how manufacturing works and all of that. And a lot of that has to do with the diversity of the class that comes in. So it's not just the learning from the professors or the coursework that you learn. You actually learn a lot more from the other team members that you work with. And again, so that really helped me really understand the other verticals and so on. And to this day, I think, because I'm more now these days, we're in a consulting role when I go to other companies and I consult and we work across sectors. But the moment I am walking into someone else's office, I'm able to understand their sector and industry and their challenges and problems. So I'm a lot more effective. So I'm not able to say that, hey, this is one thing that I've learned, I use it every day. It's the holistic, the total mindset, the total knowledge that I use on a regular basis. So for me, that has been a huge, plus point. Then, of course, the network, I cannot underplay the network. We have a very, very strong network, both in Hyderabad as well as globally. And in fact, the way I really like the way the program is structured, in that how it really brings the class together, right? I think Ritu and Raghu both would, and of course you would be a testament to that, right? That the program structure really brings the class together, and so you kind of build lifelong relationships in that class. I never expected that to be the case, like real friendships and the real relationships that you build in the class. That was really a pleasant surprise for me. Generally, because we're in a, it's not, it's not a bachelor's, it's not school that, you build relationships, build friendships, but so that was a surprise for me. So that was a good surprise.
So absolutely. Thank you so much, Naveen. So I would agree to this. So at this stage in life wherein, you have worked for 15, 16 years, or, some cohorts even with 20, 25 years of experience, and some with really young with 10 to 12 years of experience. This program really provides us a lot of platform to, to learn and learn from each other, and to bring a holistic view to the things we see. And I would not shy away from saying, once into entrepreneurial journey, once get very hardwired to the things we are doing into a day-to-day life, and we stick to that sometime, and that creates some problem. And this program is really helping us unwire that, unlearn, and then we learn few good things, how we can structurize ourselves, how we can organize the things more effectively. So that really I will agree to. And the other thing, Ritu, you rightly said, once a person has to come into entrepreneurial journey, and then one has to overcome the personal challenges like you do. Really, it is, some people are able to do it very perfectly, and sometimes some people are, get away with these challenges even. So what you will suggest on how your entrepreneurial pursuit was, how the transition was it easy, was it difficult, how was your initial days, and what you felt after the exit?
Right. So I think I will say the good and not so good. I think the first thing that hits you when you work with corporate for a really long time is that you missed a structure which takes care of multiple aspects, right? Anuj, in your case, you started your working journey as an entrepreneur, right? So it's very different, because I don't think you expect a few things. You're very hands-on, and but if you've done the corporate journey, you realize that those first few months, the initial start is tough, even if you have a great idea, because you're used to a certain way of working. You're used to the fact that there are departments to support you. The hiring is easier. Attracting talent in a startup is a challenge itself. You need to sort of figure out how and where are the sources, etc. So I think that is something that is immensely challenging. You also work on literally no to shoestring budgets. That's the other difference in the transition, right? And you really have to change your thinking around it. For example, if you want to market yourself, you don't have the big dollars now. How do you do it? And you kind of come around to it. You're innovative. You look at sort of areas where you could start. Third is that when you're starting your own business or your own startup, I think it's very important to have your first. It's very important to know where will you get your first few pieces of business. Like in my case, who would be the initial set of clients? You need to have in a consulting firm that you run, you need to have some anchor clients, because you need to get some dollars coming in every month, to be able to sustain and then, look at new businesses. So I think some of those are the challenges. Now, the good part is that, you do wake up excited every morning because you're doing something that you're passionate about. It kind of consumes you. There's room for innovation. There are no rigid corporate structures. And I would say the sky is the limit. You make your own path. So those are some of the very, very exciting things, that once you're over the initial hump, those are the things that keep you going. And those are the things which allow you to not kind of keep thinking that, one system was better than the other. So those are I think I would say in my case, those are a few of the things that I enjoyed in my journey. And, when you're looking at an exit, it is important to understand that in my case, I did not have co-founders, but, there has to be a meeting of minds, right? how this, are all your partners looking at the same thing as you are? Are they willing to exit? And what kind of an exit are they looking at? And I think it's important to see that if you want to exit, then, if you're a product firm or you're a consulting firm, where would be a good fit for somebody to acquire you, right? So where is your strength? Where is your core competency? And, how are you running your company? What's your top line? What's your bottom line? Those are important things. And you have to really prep for it. It's not something that you kind of think about, and in the short term and you're able to do. And I think those are some of the things one has to look at. In my case, those are the things that I looked at.
Yeah, perfect. So like Ritu, you told us how we can, create the first leadership team really helps us go along the way. And Naveen, what you will add to this, how we can build this leadership team, and how was your journey from corporate to an entrepreneurship?
I echo all of what Ritu said. She's right on dot. Especially, the situation has changed a little bit now with all the managed services, workspaces, and shared workspaces and all of that. But let's say, 15 years ago, if you had to start a company, literally, an entrepreneur is both you have to do everything from a janitor to network administrator to a CEO, right? You have to be everything. It literally was like that. These days, there is so much more support system and ecosystem around, managing offices and stuff like that. But you have to care about all those nitty-gritty details also, and sometimes that could sort of vex you, right? But in general, one thing that you miss, from corporate is that in a corporate, you can sort of rely on someone else saying, hey, that's not specifically my job. There's another specialist who's better at it. And so you just delegate, or you just say, hey, that's not my job. Somebody else is there. It's not my problem. And you can get away in a corporate, and a lot of times there are other people who will have to take up that, because that's part of their responsibility. When you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're getting started, when you're smaller and small teams, there is no such thing as it's not my problem. Right? Everything becomes your problem. So you just have to deal with it. And again, it's not all down, right? It's the positive side of that is, of course, you sort of hold the controls in your hand, right? You sort of control your destiny, although it will not feel like it's like that in many times, right? It does feel like you have no control whatsoever. But you do, to a large degree, you get to decide, what pace you're running at, what pace you need to go at. From that standpoint, right from early on, as Ritu said, especially if you have co-founders, there needs to be a meeting of minds. There needs to be an objective or a goal. Right? What are you working towards? Are you trying to build a lifestyle company? Are you trying to build a growth company? Are you trying to basically build for valuation and exit? How long is your exit strategy, or when is your exit strategy? All of that, really, you need to agree with your co-founder. The biggest mistake one can make is when that is not clear, entering into a co-founder relationship is going to be a disaster. And again, even after you get into that, things change over a period of time. People change over a period of time. I'm a strong advocate of having a co-founder, because that I believe that it gives you a support system. There is a checks and balance. You're also answerable to someone else. So all of that is the good side of it. Now, the other side of it is, you better make sure that you're regularly communicating about the end goal, whether you're still thinking about it the same way or not. Because if you don't have agreement on that, then things could drastically go wrong. Building the team, again, I strongly do believe in co-founders and making sure that you have people who complement your skill set, right? To make we believe in what we call an F1 team. There is an executor who's really good at getting things done, and there is a obviously a rainmaker who is really good at actually marketing and sales and who's bringing that, and there is a strategy person who is planning and who can put the plan together, and who's also a disruptor, right, who can actually think about what needs to be done and then how to disrupt, right? If you need to bring the skill sets together, if you don't have all three, then you better complement the team with somebody who can build it, whether that's a co-founder, whether that's a senior person that you're building. Your initial team, you need to ensure that you're bringing the different capabilities that you need, not from a functional role perspective, because functional roles can be distributed, right? You could be doing HR for some days and then switch over to sales. It's more of that capability and the skill set, what you're naturally good at. You need to identify and either do it yourself. I mean, if you're not, if that is not part of your skill set, then bring somebody who can build that capability or bring that capability.
Absolutely, Naveen. So this reminds me of a quote from John Maxwell. He rightly said, "A leader is the one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." Absolutely, bang on your point is. So Raghu, how your journey has been from armed forces to entrepreneurship, and how you build the culture of your organization?
So I had a very brief corporate experience after leaving the army. I worked for a couple of years. I was a business head in a renewable energy firm. So it was a sea change, from army to civilian life. It was a total 180-degree turn for me. The biggest shock for me was there were no phone calls coming after 6 p.m. in the evening, and I was getting so disturbed and anxious that is my phone not working, or it took some time for me to actually adjust to the fact that this is not the army. This is post 6 o'clock nobody will call you unless it's absolutely urgent. And another thing was like Naveen and Ritu were mentioning, at this, even after 2 years in this company, from my experience, I could make out that, there are some things that are not being done in the right way, but I was not able to pinpoint on, how that could be done in a better manner. But after PGPMAX, after meeting the wonderful people in the cohort, those 15 months, it actually gives you a very, very good idea of how how to add value to any discussions. You're in a position to suggest a good alternative. Not only are you able to identify things when they're going wrong, you're also able to offer viable solutions. So, coming back to the question, there was a shock for me when I left the army, but then the startup experience, it was almost akin to what I was having in the army. The 24/7 lifestyle, and working very long hours, and then you being responsible for not only yourself, you're responsible for your the livelihood of your family, because the success of your startup has a direct bearing on a lot of families. And the initial lot of people that you're employing, you're actually responsible for them as well, because you are seeing so many startups just hiring and firing. You don't want to be one of them. You want to create a culture. If you want to create a culture, the first step is building trust. So for us, in the stage that we are in, it's very, very critical. I think Ritu touched upon that point of being very careful with how you spend your funds. So for us right now, we are actually very, very careful. We have a small team, just about 30 odd people right now. Some of them based in US, many of them in Hyderabad. But every rupee that we spend, we make sure that it is going to contribute towards our revenue in some way or the other. Second thing is, we use a lot of we engage with a lot of companies like Amazon and Microsoft. Now, there's a very robust support system for startups right now, and you need to leverage the benefits that these companies offer. Like Amazon gives credits, and if you're part of the Red Start program, you have and if they see value in your business, it could be unlimited credits. So effectively, major chunk of your overheads for one whole year can be actually taken care of So you get credits for your cloud costs, you get credits for your HubSpot or Zoho. So there are a lot of ways where you can actually save money if you're smart. So that the money that we actually have is spent on more critical things like the salaries or hiring the best talent out there, like Naveen mentioned. We can make it a point to hire people who are smarter than ourselves. And another interesting observation which he made was about having a importance of having a co-founder. See, I think we have been interacting with a whole lot of startups. I was part of an accelerator program, two accelerator programs, one in T-Hub called Lab 32, another with New Chip. One common trend that I'm seeing is every startup now has an element of tech involved. Now, unless you have someone at a leadership level who's very comfortable with technology and how to design the optimum architecture for your product, it becomes very difficult. So you can't have a very efficient system. And the biggest lesson for me in this entire thing is be part of an ecosystem like D Labs or any innovation centers. You have access, not only you have the initial visibility for your startup, but you interact with a lot of leaders, thought leaders, business leaders, and you get very, very good ideas. Because if you're trying to do, more often than not, you're trying to do a lot of things yourself as a founder. So getting inputs from such people who have been there before you, it actually takes off a lot of hard work for you. And another thing is I thought I had done a very good job at researching the market for the identifying any competitors. But once I started interacting with the business leaders, potential customers, I realized that I started hearing names that I had not even seen on internet before. So that's the thing about startup these days. Not everything is there online. So unless you go out there, you start speaking to people, you will not know how good or bad you are. Which again brings back to the point Ritu made about how important networking is, and how important the ability to be a good salesman is. I think that's a very, very important attribute for a founder.
Yeah, absolutely, Raghu. I agree to you. So networking is really one of the most important things, but I've seen these days, so people going overboard on networking also. So it is again also very important to whom you network with, what kind of a network you are looking at, and how you use that effectively and how you contribute back to that. Yeah. So what are your advices? What are a piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs who just want to begin their journey? Yeah, somebody coming out from PGPMAX cohort 2023, or people going into PGPMAX now. So what is a piece of advice? We can start with you,
Raghu, sorry, what did you mention?
Ritu, yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
okay. Yeah. I think the most important thing is the idea itself, I would say. And if flesh out the idea, I think a bit of research around, what your market is, how are you going to be different, what's the niche that you occupy, who would be your first few clients, how you would really make that sale. And I think how would you really build competency around that product or solution that you're going to launch in the market. The other thing I would say is also, secure your finances for your personal use before you get into entrepreneurship, so that, you're kind of worry free from that end. I have known friends who have said, we set some money aside for the initial few years when we were starting our startup. So that's not a bother. We know that, we are able to run our homes and therefore, sort of focus directly into launching that idea. So I think those are some of the important things. I would say flesh out the idea, research the market, figure out your personal finances, because the first few years are going to be really tough. If you're moving from a corporate, then you will not have that salary coming in every month. So those are some of the things you need to look into.
Right. what will be your suggestions to the advice and aspiring entrepreneurs, Raghu?
Yeah, I think to add to what Ritu said, I think what I personally practice is to keep an elevator pitch ready with me, all the time, a 30-second pitch about what your startup is all about, because you don't know when you're, going to meet that person who can give you the best connect. You just don't know. So most of the best leads that I got was, I was just sounding the idea to somebody, and he said, "Hey, look, this is a great idea, and I know somebody who can actually benefit from this." And that's how I actually got a lot of good leads. So these kind of moments come very occasionally, and when it comes, you should be ready to grab it. So I think you should be prepared with your elevator pitch, so that you don't fumble when the time comes. And second thing is, have a plan B. Keep an ear to the ground, and if your plans are not going as they're as you had envisaged, you should know when to actually switch, pivot to plan B or maybe plan C.
Yeah. So Naveen, over to you for your piece of advice.
Ritu and Raghu made such excellent points. One thing that Raghu said, caught my attention, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. Entrepreneurs have to sell. There is no option. In the beginning, you have to sell your idea to your co-founders, to sell your idea to your investors. Later on, you have to sell the idea and the concept and your vision to your first initial employees, and then you have to start selling to the customers. So I mean, I myself used to think I was not a salesperson earlier, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you just have to sell, right? And selling is not it's not the stereotypical sale I'm talking about, right? It's really selling your vision, convincing other people, getting them to believe in it and getting them to understand it and all of that, right? So no matter what, you have to sell, right? And you have to hustle, right? As in, especially if you're coming from a corporate after a long stint, that support system is not going to be there, right? And you will, and a lot of it is also based on the network, right? The strength of the network. And, don't be surprised if sometimes your calls don't get returned because you no longer have that brand behind you, right? So you're not that important anymore, but but that's where your personal network and the professional network strength that you've built up comes in handy, right? Use your network, right? You definitely have to use your network. And as important as the idea is, the vision is, execution, I would say is much more important. It's all in the execution. The best of ideas will not be fruitful if your execution falters. So make sure that, and for execution, strategy and planning and strategy, as one of our profs said, right? Strategy is basically planning, and you have to plan. I think it was Dishan who would say, planning is important. The plan is not, because the plan will keep changing. But the process of planning is the most important, and you have to do that thoroughly to really see where you're headed and what your alternatives are. It's very important to pivot, because only when you plan, you will know what are the markers to watch out for when something is no longer working and so on. When you have not written it down, it's easy to fool yourself into thinking, oh, the next win is going to make everything better, and it will come the next day, and it'll come the next day, and so on. So you've got to plan, and you've got to write it down and stick to it to really see when is the time to change, when is the time to pivot, all of that. So.
Yeah, perfect, Naveen. So we will, it was an insightful session. So we will open the floor for questions. I'll just open this question answer box. Okay, so we have this.
Yeah, a quick comment to our audience. Please use the Q&A box that's available towards the bottom of the screen. If you do have questions, please share it there and we'll take it up now. Yes, Anuj.
Yeah. So first question we have is top two life lessons from your entrepreneur journey, which you could share with us. Anyone can.
I can take a first shot at it. I think I'll repeat what I said earlier. Your network and relationships that you've built, they are what you are. I mean, especially in the entrepreneurial journey, and you really need the support of your entire ecosystem. I mean, family, friends, the entire ecosystem around you to make you successful. And so that's one. And everything that we have been able to accomplish is because of all of that ecosystem coming together and supporting me and my founders and everyone else that we work with. It's because of that we have been successful. That would be one life lesson for me.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Raghu, on this?
Yeah, so I'm still comparatively, novice compared to Ritu and Naveen when it comes to entrepreneurship. But then life lessons, one thing is I make sure whenever I meet somebody, it's just not about myself. I try to figure out how, the relationship can be mutually beneficial. And, I do some research on how I can help the other person as well. That goes a long way in actually having a long-term relation. Second thing is I also make it a point to be respectful to everybody that I meet. And, it's not about how senior or junior a person is. Being respectful to people goes a long way in actually, giving you a lot of, positive, energy and credibility as well. And last but not the least, as far as taking inputs is concerned, it doesn't matter who is, giving you those inputs. I make it a point to be respectful and thankful to whoever is actually giving me advice or what their thoughts on what my product is, because it just shows that they care about you enough to actually spare some time on thinking about your product and giving you their opinion about how good or bad it is. And it's up to you how you take it. And once you compare all the ideas that are coming your way, you get a good idea of like Naveen said, you get a good idea of where there is a need for mid-course correction.
Right, absolutely. So anything you want to add, Ritu, to this from your experience?
Yeah, so I think two lessons. One is that don't assume you know it all. Reach out to other people who've been on the similar journey, because there's immense learning from there. Secondly is I think there is no substitute for being customer obsessed. Obsess around the difference you're making, your product or your solution is making to your customer's life. And that is where the excellence in what you're trying to build comes in for. So, don't try to chase the dollars, but, look at the significance or the impact your product or service is making.
Perfect. So we have another question here from Rahul Arora. So that is how to identify the right co-founder in trim your journey. That's a deep question.
I think I can talk about it. I think, you like Naveen said, it's very important to have people in the team, in the leadership team, whether they're co-founders, whether they're senior leadership, who complement your skill sets, because you cannot be good at everything. So I think the first thing is to identify, what the need is, what you bring to the table, what are the skill sets you will need to run that startup, and therefore look at what's the kind of person that you want to sort of bring on board. So that's how you look at who you need as a co-founder, or what kind of a co-founder would you sort of, and then, how do you go about looking for them, and there has to be a meeting of minds, I would say, which is very important. Like again, Naveen and Raghu said, your vision, you need to be aligned on the vision. They need to buy into the vision. And there has to be a meeting of minds. And third thing, which is a little difficult to sort of assess in the beginning, but there's also working styles. They need to gel in too. That's where a good marriage really happens, I would say. So those are a few things to look at when you're looking at a co-founder for a business.
Yeah, to add to what Ritu said, another important aspect is the trust. You need to have enough trust on your co-founder that he or she is going to, take the right decisions. Because once you decide that, I am going to look after the tech aspects and the other co-founder is going to look after the business development or the product, that should be the end of it, ideally. You should not try to interfere, and probably once a week you can have or once a day you can have a meeting and understand where things are going. But then you need to have that trust that he or she is going to drive their responsibilities in the right way.
Absolutely. So another question we have from Mr. Nirupam Ghosh. He asks, leadership is a lonely place. How do you think when things around you are not working the way you want to be them? So what you would do in that kind of situation?
I can, very simply, that's the reason that you should get a co-founder, because it's not going to be, so that to make sure that it's not a lonely place. But, on a serious note, if you actually, even if you have co-founders, if you don't have co-founders, it is important to maybe look for a mentor, or look for an advisory board, or look for like a, somebody who can be your sounding board, but also somebody who you're going to be answerable to. Because a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurial journeys, what happens is you can get lulled into a comfort zone, because you are not really, things are going okay, and so things are okay, and then you're continuing and you get into a comfort zone, and because there is no one that you are actually answerable to, right? There is sort of so no one to report to. Even when you are doing something wrong, and collectively founders together might also be doing something wrong, and somebody external is not looking at it and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? What is the goal that you have set, and are you meeting the goal, or are you not meeting the goal? Things like that. Especially, again, that comes back to planning, right? If you've not set a goal, if you've not set a plan, you can easily get into a comfort zone where as things go along, you keep changing the goal in your mind because it's not written down. You keep changing it in your mind. So for both of those things, I would say that get somebody that you're going to be answerable to, as well as somebody who can guide you, somebody who can be a sounding board. And co-founders work well, mentors work well for that purpose. That would be my answer.
I think, to add to that, so what I have personally seen, because we have been, right from the start, we have been working off co-working spaces. Right now, we are located in T-Hub, where there are a whole lot of other startups and, startup founders. So when you actually are working out of such places, that's another, good way, like Naveen said, you need that reality check at regular intervals. So when you're comparing notes, when you're seeing whether you're, where you are with respect to your milestones, and you're interacting very regularly with other founders as well. So I think that is another way you can actually get your ship moving.
Absolutely.
And don't beat yourself too much if if you've made a mistake. You're going to make plenty of them. So don't beat yourself too much. So cut yourself some slack.
So in interest of time, we'll take one more question. So this is from Kapil. In corporate, we become so comfortable. So he is asking how to come out of that comfort zone. You get into a corporate style, and then once you come to entrepreneurship.
Quit, then you'll be forced to do something else.
Now, once you come into entrepreneurship, I think your idea has to be your driving force, I would say. You just don't sort of get into it because you're getting comfortable in the corporate and now you're looking at, your board, or you're stagnating. I think your idea gives you the energy, the passion that you have for that idea gives you the energy to do things. So I would say that, that's the big difference. And sometimes in corporates, when people say we are bored or we want to do something else, is you could say, and I have really seen this with people, you reach a stage where you actually feel that you don't, there's nothing that is driving you every morning, right? And that's the time to quit and move on. And it's the same with the startup. If you don't have an idea that you believe in, that you're passionate about, you probably end up feeling the same way.
So now I will just summarize this session. So this was really insightful for all of us, or even for me as well. So we discussed about how to have an open mindset, how we can be resilience, right? And then one should be, as an entrepreneur journey, one should be open to change, open to take challenges, accept them, and the unlearning, relearning factor. And then, one has to see whether the product they are making has a customer or not. Is the customer ready to pay for it or not? How to secure your funding, how to use your funding. You don't have to be a spendthrift, or how you have to utilize it well. And one thing, it has always been known as asset light model, how one should adopt asset light model. Then we talked about Death Valley. So Death Valley is something very interesting. We discussed on that day even, right? So Death Valley is something which you cannot come out. So one has to, on an entrepreneurship journey, one has to be sure that it doesn't get into that kind of a valley, or that doesn't becomes a problem. Then you really emphasize on the product segmentation, how the markets has to be identified, how we have to move with the MVP, minimal viable product, which we call as. And then Raghu emphasized on how you can bring in culture, how you can bring in that change once you're coming from a very different background. Then I really like how Ritu told us how one can overcome his personal challenges. Once you have a passion, once you have the zeal to do something into your entrepreneurship journey, you can obviously, you will find a greater purpose in life, and then you will chase that. And then how one has to come out of the comfort of the corporate life, or comfort for anything, right? Once you are into entrepreneurship journey, you cannot say no to anything, which he rightly emphasized. And then Naveen told us, how you can find your co-founder, how well you can, make a leadership team. And once we in startup, we always call it as a moat, right? We say that we have to create a moat for the competition. Even I believe that you have to create a moat for everything. You have to see how you can, safeguard your people from the competition, how you can create a leadership team so that founder and co-founder have more time to analyze idea and to, take the ship forward. So with this, I will want to close this session, and it's been a pleasure being with all of you today. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. And it's been my honor to be among such accomplished individuals, right? And good evening to you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Thomas, for providing us this platform and opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time. Thank you, Naveen, Ritu, Raghu, and especially Anuj for hosting this session. Thank you for taking the time. This helps a lot of our participants. In fact, we had a lot of questions coming in from people who are at various stages of their entrepreneurial journey ever since this event was publicized. So thanks a lot for taking the time, especially on a Saturday evening. Look forward to hosting you for another event soon. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for being such an interactive pool of participants here. Thanks a lot. Wishing you a very nice weekend ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for arranging this, and thanks all the attendees for being patient, and thanks for giving your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Naveen.
Ritu, Raghu, Anuj, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Naveen.